Welcome to the Daphne Child Grantee Spotlight Series, where we showcase the innovative work of our grantees in combating violence against children. The Daphne Child Programme is a collaborative initiative funded by the European Union, led by Eurochild and Terre des Hommes, empowering grassroots civil society organizations across 9 European countries through a comprehensive 3-year sub-granting and capacity building program. You can learn more at daphne.childhub.org. That's daphne.childhub.org. My name is Zsofia Karetka, and today I'm speaking with Maria Yanakieva and Desislava Petkova from Concordia, Bulgaria Foundation about their project My Safety Guide, creating visual child protection materials with and for children who face literacy barriers. Maria and Desislava, it's so nice to have you on this podcast today. A warm welcome.
Thank you. We're very happy to join and to speak with you today about this project and about the program. I'm Maria Yanakieva from Concordia, Bulgaria, and I'm the coordinator of My Safety Guide project, which we're implementing in Bulgaria.
Thank you very much also for inviting us on this important for us topic. My name is Desislava Petkova. I'm a child protection expert and monitoring expert in Concordia Foundation.
Can you tell our listeners a bit more about the work that Concordia Bulgaria is doing in general and the communities that you work with?
So let's first start with the fact that Concordia Bulgaria is a part of an international network of organizations, Concordia, that focus on working with children and families that live in extreme vulnerabilities. This is also what we do in Bulgaria. We work mainly with communities which are vastly socially excluded, often due to extreme poverty. They have limited access to services, and something that is very important to note here, and especially in relation to My Safety Guide projects, institutional mistrust. So for us, these are not just statistics. This is the reality that we face every day. Children, often from marginalized communities such as Roma families and children, come to us hungry, silent, often with limited vocabulary. And we need to find a way to speak about their rights, about their needs, and of course about their experiences. We also have Crisis Center for Children Victims of Violence, which is a service that is a resident type. And we do have football team. We include children from our day centers there. We work with youth, with young adults who are also part of the more vulnerable population in Bulgaria.
How did the idea of the My Safety Guide project start?
We wanted to speak with children about their rights, but we found out that the instruments that we had up until now, such as a little booklet with pictures, but also with a lot of text, is not very accessible for most of the children who have difficulties with language. A lot of them, actually most of them, come from the Roma minority in Bulgaria, and often their first language is the Roma language. They speak at home, they don't speak in Bulgarian. And so we wanted to find a way to distribute the information that is very important for them in order to empower them to exercise their rights correctly and to be protected from the different dangers that they can have in their daily life. And we decided that the visual way may be the best for this particular target group. Of course, we didn't want just to teach them what their rights are, what is right or what is wrong. We wanted to approach this in a little bit of different ways. And the best way for these children to express themselves is through their imagination, through how they understand certain concepts that they are alienated from. So we invited the designers and we thought about, okay, let's ask them what this word actually means. How would you imagine this word? What is your first association?
I would like to add that this idea comes from practice, from people and colleagues working on the field. And this topic is directly connected to my responsibility in the organization, because in Concordia, I'm responsible for initial orientation not only of new staff, but also for the children. And also, we want to have safe space for our children in our organization. So, in order this to be done, we need also to teach and to make children know how exactly they should expect our staff to behave towards them, and also what are the mechanisms that they can use to give us feedback if something goes wrong. This is crucial because safety, to be a safe child safety organization, is a really big topic and a really high priority in Concordia. So how to reach the children, how to teach the children to know, how to make them know what is written in our 40 pages policy for child protection in Concordia. This is really hard. This was the reason we tried to make some visual materials for that.
Yes, because your project is actually adapting Concordia's internationally recognized child protection policy, as you mentioned, through art workshops with children who are illiterate or have different mother tongues. And that's really quite different from just translating the document. So you've alluded to these aspects before, but can you just walk us through why visual and image-based materials are so crucial for reaching these children?
I have to say here that our program participants are mostly children, not only, but mostly. And we are working with them in a format like day centers. So they're coming to us in our premises. And we know them very well. And we finding out every day that educational system is not working very well for these children. They're studying in a marginalized schools. A lot of problems they're facing there. They have very serious rate of early dropout from school, because in Bulgaria, going to school is obligatory up to age of 16, and they're dropping out earlier. Most of the children are kept in school just in formal way. So some of the children from segregated minorities, they are finishing school without be able to write their own name. It really happens. Our programs are intended to help these children to develop at least basic literacy. And for example, for them is very hard to understand concepts like children's right, or what is violence, what is safeguarding, what is protection. These are very, very away from them. Also, for some of the children, Bulgarian is not mother language, and we have several tools to work with children. For example, we have very short and simple and nice animated video for children's rights, but which is of course with animations without words. But we also have a small book which is child version of Concordia safeguarding policy, which is hard for them to read at all. So we are trying to make some good and interesting and engaging activities to open the topics like respect, mutual help, behave with dignity toward others, etc.
I would also like to add that we wanted to use visual expression because sometimes our children also have intellectual disabilities that are not diagnosed, and trauma-related barriers to verbal expression. So this would be the most appropriate way to communicate with these children. Another, as Desislava already pointed out very correctly, they struggle with formal and abstract language. So the visuals communicate meaning immediately without the need to use policy jargon or complicated words.
Let me just go back a bit to your work with these children. So I understand you're working with the age groups of 6 to 18. And you mentioned already about the importance of creating safe spaces for them to be able to express But you also mentioned that they speak a different language. They really don't have the same notion of abstract terms as you might do. I think the first thing I guess you need to do is establish a very strong link of trust with them so they can share with you. So how do you achieve that? How are you trying to establish that in your work with these children?
In the format of these focus group discussions that we made in the first stage of the project, we also had participation from the side of the social workers directly involved in social work with these children. So there were every single time there were a colleague that the children know very well. And also we try to make the things fun, even the topics are not very fun. And also about methodology, we made 5 different sessions because we divided the content of child protection policy divided on 5 topics. For example, for the first session, we had the subject for children's rights. And for each topic, we had to create together with the children, so use children as co-designers and source of ideas, how to visualize in 5 to 6 cards children's rights. For example, for the first topic, we had medical right for medical help, right to education, right to be protected, right to have free time and time to play, equality, non-discrimination, and the right to be heard and to be taken their opinion. The second subject is about touching, about appropriate social distance with people outside the family. The third topic was about type of abuse towards children. The fourth one was about safety and protection and how to have people who they trust and to share all concerns that they have. And the last one is how to behave with each other. So we tried to make these sessions with children as engaging as possible and always explain to children that their opinion will be taken into consideration and they're very, very important to us. Their help will be used to teach other children like them on these topics. So they were really proud to contribute to some so important topic.
I'm curious which of the topics generated the most engagement or interest from the children you've been working with? Was there one or two that really stood out from the rest, or any experience there that you can share?
In each session, we worked with different group of children. So every time the situation was unique. For example, yesterday when we were talking about how to behave with each other, of course, again, we were speaking about rights, about non-discrimination, about how to prevent violence and how to react to violence. So we tried to make a design. The most interesting things for the children in these sessions were actually our guests, our designers, because they were stood in front of the children. And when children are speaking and giving their ideas, one of the artists actually was drawing simultaneously in front of them. So they were really impressed how well this guy is drawing. So they try to give more and more ideas just to see how they will be presented in visual.
So I understand that it's always the graphic designer that creates the visuals based on the children's ideas. Another thing, because you are talking about child rights and you are working with very disadvantaged groups, so who often do not exercise these rights, or they don't have, as you mentioned, they don't have access to adequate schooling, for example. Does that create a tension in these workshops when they realize, oh, I actually have a right to this and I've never had access to that? Does it ever come up this way?
So, yes, I understand your point that probably some of the things they've never guessed. For example, their right to be heard, to be listened, to be taken their opinion in mind. and also the right, for example, to be protected when they have some troubles, because they see protection in different way than me and you and Maria. And this was really interesting. They see the word and meaning of the concept of protection as something that they have to do something about this. That
they have to protect themselves.
They have to protect themselves, not to rely to others, except their friends, for example. So some of the children, I think they're feeling like living in a jungle, that they have to protect themselves from bullying, from physical violence, from some, in many cases, offensive behavior and discrimination towards them, just with the meanings that they have, either to fight or either to fly away. So they rarely think that they have right to be protected. And this is something that I've heard from our colleagues that are social workers, that this is very, very common, that they connect the word protection with something that is actually threatening. Because in Bulgaria, there is an agency for child protection, which is governmental institution, that is something like Big Brother watching to their communities. And if something is wrong, this big brother can take their children away from the family. And my colleagues have shared that when they're going with the branded car to the neighborhood, people there need some time to realize that we are not the government. We're not the state agency for child protection. This was something that we realized has changing the whole concept of protection in their minds. In order to be effective, to be useful, we just, of course, need to gain some trust from the community. And then to make anything like social work or support. I need to say that in some cases, we're in a very, very difficult situation. Why? Because when we face some examples of domestic violence, of treating children bad, some issues of, for example, early marriages or child pregnancy, we have to report this, right? We are obliged as social workers, as people, as organization. But this is really hard because these cases will ruin the whole trust to us. The governmental institutions not always act appropriately and in an efficient way.
Yes, this is such an important point, and I've been hearing about similar challenges from other projects in Romania and Spain, for example. It really seems to be a universal tension. But I'd love to hear more about the creative side of your work. You mentioned earlier that you have some examples of drawings that children created for the different concepts. Could you share some of those with us?
It was interesting to see how the children are drawing very common symbols. They're influenced by the social media, by the signs they're seeing everywhere. For example, they always are drawing hearts for every single good thing. they represent them with a heart or with a rainbow. And they're very, very influenced by the things that like emojis or some signs, for example, talking head. So in the beginning, we were struggling with this lack of imagination. So the first 15, 20 minutes, we tried to avoid and to go further and to make them give their own examples. And then what the things that was happening are that they start trying to represent the situation in their own family or in their own school. And then this was the break point then when they started to draw really embarrassing situations, really hard for them situations of beating, of defending themselves. For example, situation at home, we start to see that child is in the home and there was another parent who is drinking, etc., etc. So we find ourselves in a situation to go deeper in the child's own family problematic situation and try to not to go very deep because this is the group work, but to validate their experience and their emotions. And yes, we had a lot of pictures from their inside of their homes. And we realized that children are very willing to share. They need to share. And we return this back to our colleagues that these children in situations that they feel free, they start to feel free to share. They are really want to share. They need just a safe space. This is what they need. The other thing that we found out that as bigger the children become, the less imagination they have. But I think this is a problem not only for the minorities, but for the whole educational system.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the schooling they receive is very inadequate. So I guess that doesn't really have their visual vocabulary either, and the associations. Indeed. Maria, I think you had something to add here.
Yes. I wanted to add that you are asking about how they represent in pictures. Right. What I see is that usually, because I guess you are imagining some abstract objects. However, from what I see, they express it through action. So when we speak about, for example, bad touch or good touch, we see a hand that is slapping or a hand that is tapping you on the back. So the associations are directly to actions. And I can give an example from yesterday. We have noticed that very often protection is associated with violence. Like the example from yesterday, we were speaking about help. What is mutual help, I think. And one of the children said, when you protect somebody from someone else, so the association was a shield. And then from this shield, it quickly became a sword. So the other child said, okay, so another way of protecting your friend is using a sword, not a shield. So you can see that the associations develop usually towards something that is not what we have expected, that is not your, let's say, usual understanding of the words. So my answer would be they describe actions, or their imagery just develops in a very surprising way sometimes.
Yes, I mean, many other projects mentioned working with children, and they are using a completely different language, and they have a completely different understanding of words. So it really resonates with what you are saying here as well. But also bearing in mind that these materials, so the output that you're producing, will need to work across a huge age range. So from 6 to 18, from what I understand, and for children at very different levels of literacy. And I know you are working with a graphic designer for the creative solutions, but how do you create something that's kind of sophisticated enough, but also simple enough and accessible enough at the same time?
So the sketches are very simple. It is the job of the designers to, with their notes, with our protocols, and with these sketches to develop cards that will be piloted then. So for now, of course, they are on a very simple level. You understand that these children are not, when we work with teenagers, we are not working with the, standard understanding of a teenager that has a fully developed motorics. So even though there is an age gap, the results are quite similar, let's say.
So the output of this project then is this sort of toolkit, these cards that you will be able to use, and you want to make them internationally available through Concordia's offices. So I understand these are in Austria, Romania, Kosovo, Moldova, and Germany. So I guess we understand what makes these visual tools potentially universal across different cultural contexts, because it uses very basic visuals. But also, do you have any thoughts on what might need to be adapted for them? What are the parts that you might want to adapt for different contexts at a later stage, obviously?
We were talking about that with Maria before the conversation, and we shared from our experience from yesterday that not only children, but also their teachers, because they were with us yesterday, need to be equipped with some practical tools in order to speak with children about something like equality, for example, or something like non-discrimination, something like child participation, because they're very, very abstract. And also, we realized yesterday that on a daily basis, these concepts are not is part of their everyday life. Actually, they're not happening in the classroom, because yesterday we were shocked how, for example, the teachers behave towards not appropriate child's behavior. And for example, one of the children were ashamed in front of us, which were absolutely outside dynamics of this classroom. So I think working as a further step, as a future plan, working with people that directly work with children, right, like social workers or teachers, and do something like training of trainers, introducing these cards, probably this will have very good impact on the way these subjects are discussing and present in schools.
I find that really interesting, because what started out as a sort of explainer for your child protection policy for children is kind of turning out to be a diagnosis tool
Very
of
good
the
diagnosis.
problems. So I guess if this toolkit proves successful, you're planning a follow-up on violence detection and reporting. For my last question, for other organizations working with children who face language or literacy barriers, whether refugees, ethnic minorities, or children with learning difficulties, what's your key advice for making child protection accessible to everyone?
From my point of view, we cannot give a specific key advice. We are more than happy to work on these cards and to also distribute them to different professionals that work with these target groups. And I really wanted to mention within this conversation that I was very happy to meet the other beneficiaries of this Daphne Child program, to meet with other Bulgarian organizations who are also working with slightly different target groups, as you mentioned, with refugees, for example. And my personal opinion is that our tool can be beneficial for other organizations as well. So, of course, using games, using visual aids to show or to teach the rights of the children is always a good approach. And again, what we have found out is that you also necessary prerequisite is to have educated professionals, to work with the professionals as well, with the children, but also with, especially in the case of Bulgaria, with the teachers and with the state institutions. I think a key finding is the need to collaborate with state officials and state professionals.
I would add that every time when you're sitting in front of children and say just 3 simple words, let's play a game, the whole situation changes. And all these heavy topics about violence, about child abuse, about bullying in schools, they're really heavy as topics to speak with children. But when you have this tool to make the subject in the positive, how the things should look like, how we would like to be, and to make the process playful and joyful for the children, it might be the best approach.
Those are beautiful final words. Thank you so much, Maria and Desislava, for your insights on this very exciting project. And thank you for joining me today on the Daphne Child Grantee Spotlight podcast.
Thank you, Sophia. We were happy to discuss this.
To our listeners, Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Daphne Child Program's Grantee Spotlight series. You can learn more about this program and all the 48 grantee projects across 9 countries at our website daphne.childhub.org. Until next time, goodbye!